Welcome to the last competency of your Cookery module. Remember that through our hands, we may learn, accomplish, and create new things. I am teacher Flora, who will guide you to understand the concepts of cookery. Before we proceed, be ready with your notebook, pen, and learning module. To begin with, let us first try to find out the competencies you will master. Identify the market forms and cuts of meat. Identify the appropriate cooking methods for meat cuts.
Read the following questions carefully. Select the letter of the correct answer and write on your activity notebook. 1. These cuts are always the starting point for smaller cuts. A. Car cut. B. Fabricated cuts. C. Primal cuts. D. Variety cuts. And the answer is C. Primal cuts. 2. The classic T-bone roast, the increasingly popular flat iron steak, and Denver steak come from the blanc. A. Beef chuck. B. Beef flank. C. Beef loin. D. Beef round. And the answer is A. Beef chuck. 3. The most desirable cuts of meat in beef is found in the blanc. A. Beef chuck. B. Beef round. C. Beef sirloin. D. Short loin. And the answer is D. Short loin. 4. It's a fatty cut with interchanging layers of meat and fat, making it the most flavorful of the pork cuts. A. Kasim. B. Lempo. C. Lomo. D. Pige. And the answer is B. Lempo. 5. It is where we get some of the lamb's most impressive looking cuts and is sometimes called the hotel rock. A. Lamb breast. B. Lamb flank. C. Lamb loin. D. Lamb rib. And the answer is D. Lamb rib. You may pause this video and continue answering number 6 to 10. What's in and what's new in your learning module? Meat refers to animal parts that are used as food. It is the flesh of domesticated animals such as cattle, hogs, and lambs, and of wild game animals such as deer. Meat is considered as perishable food. The moist surface of meat is prone to bacteria contamination. Variety of meats cured and uncured should be stored carefully. Meat is made up of muscle fibers connected with tissues and fats. It is 15 to 20% protein, 50 to 70% water, a good source of vitamin B and trace amount of iron. Meat is required to be inspected by an authorized inspector or veterinarian and be declared fit for human consumption. We have 6 market forms of meat. First, fresh meat. These are forms of meat after slaughter that has not undergone chilling. Second, chilled meat. This has been kept cold above freezing point within 24 hours after slaughter. Third, frozen meat. These are meat stored in the freezer. Fourth, cured or processed meat. These are meat products that have been cured with curing agent like salt, sodium nitrate, sugar, and spices. And fifth, canned meats. These are cooked meat products and only requires to be reheated. And the last, dried meats. These are meats that have been salted then dried either in the sun or in the oven. Example of this is the utak. Common meat varieties. Beef is name given to the meat we get from mature cattle from about 2 years of age. A veal is taken from calves usually calved at 3 months of age. Meat can only be labeled veal or category V meat if the cow was aged 8 months or less at the time of slaughter. It is category D meat if the cow is 8 to 12 months of age at the time of slaughter. Pork is the flesh of domesticated pigs. And lamb, these are taken from young sheep aged less than 12 months. As sheep age, their meat becomes tougher. The flesh color from lamb is quite pink and deepens to red with age. Lamb, beef, veal, and pork may be purchased in some of all these forms. The whole dressed carcass is what is left of the whole animal after it has been slaughtered. It does not usually include the head, feet, or hide. However, pork can be purchased with the feet and head still attached. The side represents the first stage in breaking down a carcass, referring to one side of the carcass which has been split lengthwise along the backbone. Sides are further broken down by cutting them into two lateral pieces called quarters. The rear section is called the hind quarter and the front section is called the fore quarter. The precise place where the side is divided depends on the animal. Beef is usually divided between the 10th and 11th rib, while pork is usually cut between the 6th and the 7th rib. Primary cuts or wholesale cuts. The first cuts after the side has been divided into quarters. Primal cuts in the names given to them vary according to the animal. Primal cuts are the most popular forms of meat purchased by food service operations. Primal cuts are always the starting point for smaller cuts. Fabricated cuts. Primal cuts are fabricated into smaller cuts for roast, steaks, chops, cutlets, stewing meat, ground meat, and so forth, according to individual customer requirements. The portion cuts or restaurant cuts. These are ready-to-cook portions, prepared according to the requirements of the recipe. They require the least amount of work by you as a cook. However, they are also the most expensive per kilo to purchase of all meat cuts because of the labor gone into preparing them before they reach you. Bone in, bone out. This refers to whether the bone is left in the cut or portion or cut out. The fancy meat refers to the edible organs of various animals. It includes animal of cuts and products that cannot be classified as meat, including the head, tail, feet, and marrow bones. Beef is divided into large sections called primal cuts. The chuck primal and rib primal are located in the forequarters with subprimals of plate, brisket, and shank. The round primal and loin primal are in the hindquarters with subprimals of short loin, sirloin, tenderloin, flank, and round. The most tender cuts of beef, like the rib and tenderloin, are the ones furthest from the hoof in the horn. By contrast, the neck and leg muscles are worked the most, which makes them tougher. These are the four basic beef primal cuts, which are then broken down further, or fabricated into subprimals or food service cuts. In turn, these subprimal cuts are then sliced and chopped into individual steaks, roast, and other retail cuts. Beef chop come from the forequarters, consisting of parts of the neck, shoulder blade, and upper arm. Beef chop produces tough but very flavorful cuts of meat that makes chuck a good choice for braised dishes like beef stew or pot roast, both of which tenderize tough cuts. Due to its fat content, beef chuck is also excellent for making ground beef that produces juicy burgers and ground beef stew. Beef brisket is one of the most flavorful cuts of meat. Although it is tough and needs to be cooked in just the right way, brisket is frequently used for making pot roast and it's the traditional choice for corned beef. Another very popular technique for preparing brisket is to slow cook it in a barbecue or smoker. Beef flank can be cooked on the grill. Since it has tough muscle fibers, it can get even tougher if it is overcooked, so be careful. Beef flank is also good for braising and is often used for making ground beef. Beef tenderloin should only be cooked using dry heat methods, such as grilling and boiling. The meat is already super tender, so long cooking times are unnecessary. Keep it quick in the heat high. The full sirloin is itself subdivided into top sirloin and bottom sirloin. Top sirloin is generally fabricated into steaks that are good for grilling. Since the sirloin is closer to the rear leg of the animal, the muscles get a bit tougher. Moving on to the beef primal cuts from the hindquarter or back of the animal. The short loin is where we find the most desirable cuts of meat. These include T-bone and porterhouse steaks as well as the strip loin or strip steak. Dry heat cooking is best for tender cuts from the short loin. Since they're already tender, steaks and roast from the beef rib primal can undergo various forms of dry heat cooking and remain tender. Pork primal have all kinds of peculiar names, like the Boston butt, which is nowhere near the butt, and the picnic shoulder, which you would never bring to a picnic. Pork has 4 primals. The pork shoulder primal has subprimals of shoulder blade, shoulder picnic, jaw, foot, and hack. The pork loin primal includes the loin rib end, loin center, and sirloin. The pork leg primal includes the leg butt portion, leg shank portion, ham, hack, and foot. The pork belly primal has no subprimal. Pork is divided into large sections called primal cuts. These primal cuts are then broken down further into individual retail cuts, which is what you find at the grocery store. The most tender cuts of pork are from the rib and loin. It's where the expression, high on the head, comes from. The most desirable cuts of meat came from the higher up on the animal. By contrast, the shank and shoulder muscle produce the toughest cuts. The kasim is one of the most common and versatile primal cuts of the meat case. Cut from the shoulder of the pig, it's a tough cut with lots of fat and tissue that makes it ideal for slow cooking, but also makes it a general purpose. Lomo is cut from the back of the pig. This is moderately flavorful primal cut that will remain tender if cooked right. Cooking methods are roasting, braising, and frying. From the same area as the pork loin, the tenderloin is the most tender of all cuts from the pig. It's enough to be pan-fried whole and fantastic when treated like a steak, served on the outside until the inside is cooked through while being basted with a flavorful butter. The second most versatile of the primal pork cuts, the pige, is taken from the opposite side from where the kasim is cut from, the back leg area. It's ideal for slow cooking to help tenderize the meat. The favorite of Pinoy, the liempo or pork belly primal cut, comes from the side or belly area of the pig. It's a fatty cut with interchanging layers of meat and fat, making it the most flavorful of the pork cuts. Lechon belly roast can be stuffed and rolled, while the spare ribs are delicious cubed up and used in sinigang. Those located closer to the belly are the ribs, while those closer to the backbone are the more tender baby back ribs. Remove the lining that covers the inner portion of the ribs or ask your butcher to do it for you before cooking. You may grill or roast inside the oven. The pata or hack from either the front or the back knee joints of the pig is another Pinoy favorite because of the crispy pata. But beyond this popular dish, the underrated pata is a cut that can be used for the wide variety of dishes that otherwise require the general purpose cut. Lamb refers to young male and female sheep. They are slaughtered at approximately 6 months of age. The lamb carcass dress weight is usually between 25 and 27 kilograms. Because it is young, lamb is very tender, promoting dry heat cooking for most of the animals. Due to the high price per pound in a small carcass size, lamb is most often marketed with the bone in. Sheep over the age of 12 months is referred to as mutton. Mutton has a much stronger flavor and is less tender than lamb. Unlike beef, which is divided into sides before being broken down into its basic primal cuts, and pork, which is butchered into its primal cuts straight away. Lamb is first divided into front and rear sections, called the foresaddle and hindsaddle. From there it is then fabricated into the four basic lamb primal cuts. The foresaddle includes the rack primal and chuck primal, which are broken down into subprimals of shoulder, rib, breast, neck, and foreshank. The hindsaddle includes the leg primal and loin primal, which are further broken down into the sirloin, flank, leg of lamb, and hind shank subprimals. The lamb neck is best used for making lamb stew. The lamb shoulder is often roasted and rolled in a skin beach stuffed as well. Lamb shoulder is also sometimes cut into chops. Can also be cooked with moist heat such as braising. A lamb breast, which is worked heavily whenever the animal moves, contains a lot of cartilage and other connective tissues. This makes the breast one of the few lamb primal cuts that need to be cooked low and slow with moist heat. Lamb breast can also be used to make ground lamb. Lamb flank can be tough unless cooked with moist heat, so braising is best. Lamb flank can also be used for making ground lamb. The lamb sirloin is sometimes considered part of the leg primal cut, but it can also be prepared separately. In this case, it is frequently cut into chops or steaks and cooked using dry heat. The leg of lamb, a large, relatively expensive cut of 3 to 5 or 6 pounds, can be cut into leg chops, though it is usually prepared whole and presented with fried at big family meals or on special occasions. The lamb loin is where we get lamb loin roast and lamb loin chops, both tender cuts that are best prepared using dry heat. Sometimes called the hotel rack. The lamb rib primal cut is where we get some of the animal's most impressive looking cuts. Lamb rib chop, lamb crown roast, and rack of lamb, depending on the size of the ribs. Some lamb chops might comprise 2 ribs. You may pause this video and do the activity in What's More, What I Have Learned, and What I Can Do. For you to assess what you have learned, you read and understand the following questions carefully. Select the letter of the correct answer and write on your activity notebook. 1. Market form of meat that has been kept cold above freezing point within 24 hours after slaughter. A. Chilled meat. B. Cured meat. C. Fresh meat. D. Frozen meat. 2. What do we call the section of fat just above the Boston butt, which can be used for making lard, salt pork, or added to sausage or ground pork? A. Clear plate. B. Pork loin. C. Pork ham. D. Pork shank. 3. Beef chuck is excellent for making ground beef that produces juicy burgers and ground beef stew because of blank. A. Its location. B. Its fat content. C. Its cartilage content. D. Its composition. 4. Which of the following statements about pork cuts is not true? A. The most tender cuts of pork are from the rib and loin. B. The shank and shoulder muscles produce the most expensive cuts. C. The most desirable cuts of meat come from the higher up on the animal. D. The pork belly primal has 2 subprimals. 5. The most flavorful of the pork cuts is the blanc. A. Kasim, B. Liempo, C. Pata, D. Pige. You read the statement carefully and fill in the blank with the correct word or words. You write your answer in your activity notebook. 6. Blank is the type of protein that turns into gelatin when it is braised slowly. 7. Beef blanc is frequently used for making pot roast, and it's the traditional choice for corned beef. 8. Beef blanc contains a lot of cartilage, especially around the ribs, which is why beef short ribs are ideal for braising. 9. The pork blanc primal has no subprimal. 10. The lamb blanc are extremely tough and full of connective tissue because they work all day, every day. For your additional activity, in your activity notebook, you answer the following questions concisely. 1. Why is it important to know the different cuts of meat? 2. How will this help you when you shop for meat? To check your answers, refer to the answer key on your module.
Congratulations, learner! For a job well done. See you again in the next lesson. Goodbye!